Remember the freshmen who signed with Nebraska way back in early December? Well, they deserve another look after so much has changed with the roster over the last few weeks. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase.
All right, good morning. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Connor Happer here from 1620 The Zone and Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Over the weekend, we had like a critical mile marker in the off season. And oh wait, this isn't 2010 anymore. The All-American Bowl, which is now the Navy All-American Bowl, used to be the Army All-American
The Navy
Bowl.
overthrew the Army.
Yeah, which is crazy to me. That happened. And Nebraska did have two participants in the game, two signees in the game, Cortez Mills and Christian Jones from Omaha West Side. And I remember like watching this game because it was kind of one of those games one of those events where it was sort of the only thing on a Saturday morning, and Nebraska would have a guy in it and they'd be down to, a decision at the end or something like that. And it used to be about like when guys would get on TV and they would put the hat on and they would commit. And now the college football calendar has made this game, well, it's just made it take on a different light. But it does give us an excuse to talk a little bit about the freshman class that Nebraska is bringing in. And then, of course, memories of the game, how we remember it.
There were still a couple guys who committed, I think, during the game. And it was super weird because it's way anticlimactic and past the time. And it's like, shouldn't you already be in school at that place?
Signed,
aren't you
right?
Yeah. Aren't you taking a break from college to come play in this Navy All-American game? And you're now just picking a school? What's going on?
Yeah, that's super. So wait, they weren't signed already, or they just like fake signed, like they just committed and they were already signed?
I don't know the specifics of it. In fact, I will admit to you that I did not watch the game, but I went and read all of the press releases about the game or all of the Twitter information about the game, and it appeared that there were still a couple of players who announced their college decisions. They may have already announced their college decisions and like gone to bowl practices and started school for all I know. But, you got that stage. Is the game still on NBC? It was on NBC for the longest time.
So. Yeah.
Yeah. And so why not? Why not get up there and pull out a hat?
Okay. So this is let's put a pin in that. This part of it is an episode for another day, right? The college football calendar changing, and
maybe tomorrow.
Maybe another day is tomorrow. Okay. But we're going to take today and talk about some of the, under talked about people within the Nebraska football program right now. And that would be the signees to the 2025 class, all of which who were recently recruited over, basically. I mean, the Nebraska had 16 people in the transfer portal. And this will be good to look at it from their perspective, because we used to talk about them in terms of the freshmen, in terms of playing time. And now it's just a lot different of a picture than it was 3 weeks ago.
The freshmen for years were the flavor of the month in the off season. You'd sign freshmen even in December, even in the era of the early signing period. But, more notably when the freshmen would sign in February, it was they were at this time of year, you could not create enough buzz to fill up the time that people wanted to hear about the incoming freshmen, about the signees. And now, I mean, they signed like right after the Iowa game, a few days. It was Black Friday, before the conference championship games even. Here are these freshmen signing. And then, like you said, Connor, they're recruiting over the top of them. Matt Rule has said many times that he'll never apologize for recruiting someone's replacement. I don't know. I've probably quoted him on that 10 times in different episodes of this podcast. Sorry. If you listen every day, you've grown tired of me hearing me say that, but I've heard Rule say it a few times, and that is meant to be taken literally. in the 2024-2025 roster reconstruction format, because it's not like they come in and they redshirt or whatever, and then he recruits over the top of them. No, they sign, and then a week later, he's recruiting over the top of them, recruiting their replacements with more experienced, older players out of the transfer portal. So, yeah, I thought we should reevaluate, because we did spend some time in early December and in the months leading up to that talking about how these signees might impact Nebraska football in 2025 and beyond. Well, now we know so much more about what the 2025 team is going to look like because of the 16 and counting transfers who are in the fold. So let's go back and look at these freshmen, specifically a few positions, and say, has the outlook for them changed as far as immediate playing time or immediate opportunities to help this team because of who Nebraska's taken out of the portal?
Well, and the short answer, basically, spoiler alert on all of them, is yes. I mean, there was
for some there's more opportunities, and for some there's less.
Right. So let's dive into a few of them right now. You immediately, your mind immediately goes to the best players in the class, like the top rated players in the class. And according to On3, Nebraska's top 2 players were Dawson Merritt and Cortez Mills. All right, so let's look at those guys in particular.
Those 2 positions are, I think, the most interesting positions.
So linebacker definitely got some reinforcements in the transfer portal over the last several weeks here with Deion McCullough and Marquez Watson Trent, and Javen Wright is returning. So that position where you might have said for Dawson Merritt, wow, there is an immediate opportunity to step right in and play, not just play, like play a significant role, be depended on in 2025. It's less there now, that's for sure.
Yeah, and that's what Rule told Merritt coming out of Kansas City, coming out of high school on signing day. You know, one of the more memorable takeaways is, Dawson Merritt, you need to be ready. And I think that applied to Christian Jones too. With Jones, though, the recruiting process was different, and he was long known to the Nebraska staff, and he was long known to Nebraska fans. And, we saw him commit, what was it, early in his senior season or shortly before his senior season. So it wasn't as much of a wow moment when Nebraska signed him at the end, like it was with Merritt, who was committed to Alabama, and his father coaches for the Chiefs, and you have this whole Kansas City thing that's going on. So there was more of a spotlight on Merritt, and the talking point there was, you need to be ready. Okay, so I think that applies also to Christian Jones, or applied also to Christian Jones back in early December, and throw Pierce Newberry into this conversation too, because he plays the same position out of Millard North. Well, like you said, Deion McCullough, coming from Oklahoma, experienced in the Big Ten. He started his career at Indiana, so he's on to his 3rd school, an older guy, big, like he's going to come in and have an opportunity right away. Marquez Watson Trent, all-conference player in the Sun Belt, defensive player of the year, in fact, in the Sun Belt, has played at Memorial Stadium with Georgia Southern a couple of years ago.
He's got over 300 tackles in his college career already.
Yeah, experienced, like he's been through the battles. Like, these are the guys now who were coming in to make an impact at linebacker. And, what does it mean for the 3 who signed in December? Well, it means they could be more patient with them. It means there's more time for them, but it isn't necessarily what they signed up for.
You know what's funny? Here's a bigger picture topic. We have spoken a lot about this over the last couple of weeks, and this idea that Matt Rule, obviously as far as the roster construction is concerned, it's not as much of a developmental program, because you're going to plug guys like Marquez Watson Trent and Deion McCullough straight in, or Dane Key, or Isaiah Hunter, or whoever else straight in. Yeah, Elijah Pritchett. Like you're going to plug those guys right in and play. And so that's not development. That's just, you get players and you put them right in to the starting lineup. You're not really developing them unless they're here over multiple years. A guy like Hardley Gilmore could be developed, or an Isaiah Hunter could be developed. But it's interesting that because you have added these transfers and they are immediate impacts, and some of them are here for 1 or 2 years, now you get the opportunity to return back to the freshmen and say, well, we could develop you at a normal rate. We could, you don't have to be immediately thrust. And that's been the story with so many Huskers over the years, that careers have just not skyrocketed the way we thought. It's because they got in the field early and they were depended on deeply early. And then in a lot of cases, Mitch, they were dependent on like out of position too. I think of Turner Corcoran right away.
I was thinking Wan'Dale
Robinson right away, right? There's a lot of those guys. So it's funny how we could balance that out, and you really look at those younger guys and you say, man, this is probably not the worst thing in the world for your developmental track. And if it doesn't work out, you could always transfer. But if it does, then there's an opportunity to step in soon too.
At the same time, if you are a transcendent player, if you are the kind of player who is just ready to go as a freshman, that opportunity is going to be there in today's version of the Matt Rule Nebraska program. All you have to do, we're talking about linebackers, and all you have to do is look at the linebacker group from this previous season. And Nebraska had experience at linebacker coming back in 2024. It had John Bullock, it had MJ Sherman, it had Mekhi Bayer, and still look at what Vincent Shavers and Willis McGahee IV were able to do this year. So if you are Dawson Merritt, if you are Christian Jones, I don't think the urgency, well, maybe the urgency, but I don't think the motivation and the ability to make a difference, to have an opportunity to play, if you're truly ready, changes it all. Because of what Nebraska's done in the portal. Yeah, I mean, if it's needed, they can be more patient with you. But as far as what the mindset should be for Merritt or for Jones, now coming out of this opportunity to measure himself in the All-American Bowl against some of the better players in the country, and really that's what that game is about. That game is not about the game; it's about the practices leading up to the game. So, yeah, I think the opportunity is still there. When let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about the position involved with the other Nebraska player in that All-American game, the wide receiver spot. It's a similar discussion to linebacker, but I think it's on offense. It's different. Let's look at what Nebraska's done in the portal at wide receiver and how it might impact the incoming wide receivers. We'll go over who those guys are in case you have forgotten.
All right, but first, I want to take a moment to tell you about our friends from Game Time. The college football playoff is winding down. We're down to one more game left in the CFP. So you want to go? Well, Game Time's got that opportunity for you. Or to see any live event, there is nothing like it. Game Time can help you elevate that experience. You can check out Game Time's new features, of which there are many of them coming all the time. Game Time Picks is one of them. Get the tickets with ease to the events that you want to see. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff, so it only shows you incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and pools of tickets. Game Time, it's fantastic. Give it a try. Browsing through the deals is a breeze. I mean, even if you're just looking for something to do, Game Time can be an opportunity for you to hop on there. Lets you see the views from the seats before you buy, and it gives you the total upfront cost with no surprise fees at checkouts. So it's no frills there. Plus, on-time ticket delivery and lowest price guarantee provide complete peace of mind for you. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with our friends from Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Okay, thanks for joining us today on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. I'm Mitch Sherman. Connor Happer is here with me as always. We're going to continue this discussion about Nebraska's freshman class and move to the offensive side of the ball. So I want to spend the rest of, we'll get back to defense, but I want to spend a few minutes here talking about offense and specifically how the transfer portal has impacted the ability of true freshmen coming in, players who signed in the month of December, to impact the program right away at the wide receiver spot. And then I think it's a different conversation altogether. Well, obviously it is, because Nebraska has not signed a running back out of the portal. It's a different conversation altogether at running back. We might know something about how the coaches feel about not only the running backs coming in, but the running backs who are returning based on the activity that we've seen in the portal so far. But first, at wide receiver. So it's been a transformation just since players like Cortez Mills, who was a star by all accounts in the Navy All-American Bowl practices, and Isaiah Mosey, the son of Nebraska offensive assistant Jamar Mosey. Those are the two wide receivers I think that you can expect. Well, Jeremiah Jones is a possibility too, because just of his size and versatility, but we don't even know for certain if he's going to be a wide receiver at Nebraska. That's kind of where they have him listed right now. It is where they have him listed right now on the 25 roster. But Nebraska has gone out and signed Dane Key, veteran wide receiver from Kentucky. It signed Nyzia Hunter, playmaking wide receiver in his first season on the field at Cal last year. It signed Hardly Gilmore, a promising young wide receiver who spent last season at Kentucky with Da'Keel Shorts, Nebraska's new wide receivers coach. And it remains in the mix. We may wake up on Tuesday next week and see Jonah Wilson from Houston as a Nebraska football player, also a fourth potential wide receiver to come in via the transfer portal here this winter. So if you're Cortez Mills, if you're Isaiah Mosey, what's the outlook? How has it changed? By the way, Nebraska's also lost the majority of the returning players who were coming back at that position. It does return Ja'Cory Barney, Janiron Bonner, but just about everybody else is gone.
Yeah, you mentioned Barney there, and I'm glad you did, because anytime that I've talked about this group over the last several weeks, after the season ended, it's almost like, yeah, we get a little bit infatuated with the new guys, and Dane Key is going to be a really good addition, I think, to Nebraska. But like, Nebraska still has Ja'Cory Barney, that is proven, talent and production that they're going to have, and it does, like, having any guy like that at that position, it lightens the load on what you're going to need from basically every other guy. But here's a position I think that provides a little bit more opportunity for young guys. I mean, Cortez Mills and Isaiah Mosey probably they go right into the mix. He is an important addition at the top of the depth chart, and he's kind of at the top of the food chain for Nebraska at that spot. But we mentioned Hunter and Gilmore earlier. Those are guys who, Hunter had a really good season, but it was a freshman last year at Cal. Gilmore had a solid second half of a season as a freshman at Kentucky. And Barney had a good full season last year. So it's not like it's not like at linebacker where you're sitting behind, multi-year Power 5 starters. Right. I think if you're Cortez Mills, or Mosey for that matter, like you're looking at it and saying, I could go right in the mix here. And it's not like they only need 4 receivers. Those guys ultimately end up getting all the catches, but Nebraska needs playmakers, deeper than that. So I think there's an opportunity for those guys to play.
So I think Dane Key comes in at a level similar to where Nebraska had Jamal Banks. I won't put Isaiah Nair in the same category because it was a slower progression for Isaiah Nair. Jamal Banks came in day one, was like an alpha on the team last year. And I think when Dane Key shows up at Nebraska next week, that's the position that he's in. I think Nyzia Hunter comes in, and he's in a similar position to Ja'Cory Barney, like somebody who's proven it at the college level. You know that you're going to get a lot of production, hopefully a lot of production out of that player in 2025. So Hunter, to me, is on a level similar to what Ja'Cory, where you value Ja'Cory Barney. And then I think Hardly Gilmore is on a level similar to the way Nebraska looks at Quinn Clark and Keelan Smith. Like, he's going to slot in with those guys. When they're taking reps in practice, I think you can expect to see Hardly Gilmore in with those two players who redshirted for Nebraska at the wide receiver spot last year. As for where Cortez Mills comes in, like that's kind of a wild card. Like, Cortez Mills has a lot of Ja'Cory Barney type of skills in him. You could have those two players on the field at the same time, both as a threat to take the ball in like a handoff or a reverse or whatever it might be. Like, having two guys. I mean, we saw Barney and we saw him light it up at times. Some Big Ten defenses didn't really have an answer for him. Cortez Mills could be like part A and part B with Barney to that formula.
All right. So do you have anything else on wide receiver, or do you want to move on to running back? Because I think it's interesting too.
Let's do running back quick and then take a break. We'll finish it up with D-line in the third segment.
Okay. So Nebraska brought in a couple running backs in this recruiting class, Jamarian Parker from St. Louis and Connor Booth from Wahoo Newman. And they jump into a position that just lost Dante Dowdell, that just lost Gabe Irvin. Both of those guys gave them, obviously Dowdell gave him a lot of production last year. That brings back Emmett Johnson. That still has Quentin Ives and like Mekhi Nelson in that spot. It's outside of Emmett Johnson, who's the Dane Key of the running backs, right? He's the top guy at the running back position. It is totally wide open. Now, there was a lot about Quentin Ives having good bowl practices and stuff like that. If I am Nebraska, I'm trying to find another guy in the transfer portal here, but we'll see how they approach that come spring.
Does the fact that Nebraska hasn't really been in the mix, like Nebraska hasn't brought in a bunch of running backs that have grabbed our attention, and the guys have been out there. There have been running backs in the portal, and it just doesn't seem to have been a priority for Nebraska. I think it says something.
To be clear, I don't think they're going to. I don't think they will.
Not this month for certain. Now, let's see what happens in spring practice. Somebody gets hurt in spring practice, which happens with running backs, unfortunately, or maybe Quentin Ives is not at the level that you thought he would be after the winter. Well, then absolutely you go into the portal. But Nebraska's been high on Quentin Ives. Like, I recall talking to Matt Rule at this time last year about Quentin Ives and legitimately walking out of the conversation thinking that guy is going to break out in 2024 and have a kind of season that, maybe that Emmett Johnson did in 23. And it didn't happen. He scored his first touchdown of his career in the Pinstripe Bowl back near his hometown. But they still like him. I think it's been a matter of just slowly bringing him along. You have to have him up to speed on pass protection if you're going to put him back there with Dylan Raiola. They still like him. So, and the fact that they haven't gone into the portal, even after losing Dowdell and Irvin and Ramir Johnson to graduation, I think it tells you something about how they feel, one, about Ives, and also how they feel about Parker and Booth. Sometimes we just talk about Parker. He's the one who's been was more on the national map. But Connor Booth from right here in Wahoo, look out. Under the radar, yes, but look out. A good player. That's basically all I can say. I think he's somebody who they expect to be an impact player in this offense at some point.
Yeah, and I think it also tells you how they feel about the position as well, and that it's not necessarily a position that needs to have a superstar, and that could get the production done from, if you're thinking about this in terms of salary cap or whatever,
think about that.
It could be a low salary cap position. That's how it is. Yeah. That's how it is approached at the NFL level.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. If you have three who can play, you're in good shape. Now they have to stay healthy, and you can't go to the waiver wire in the middle of the season or pull somebody up from injured reserve, which is, the reality of college football today. But if you have three who can play, then you're doing pretty well to go into a season. So I think they're gonna assess that in the spring, and if they need to go get one, they will. But they're not certain right now that that's the case. So the running back signees have maybe increased their value or what their stock might be over the winter season. All right, we'll finish up this discussion after the break, talking about Nebraska's defensive line and how the last 2 months have impacted what it looks like for the signees in the 2025 class. That's next. All right, Mitch Sherman here to tell you about a new sponsor of the Locked On Nebraska podcast, Wayfair. So after the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little tender, loving care. I always find that decluttering, I find this after I'm convinced of this in conversations with others who live in my house. Decluttering, refreshing space, it helps you get back into a routine for the new year, whether you're tidying up, cleaning things out, or you just want to give things some kind of a freshened up look to start the year. Wayfair, it gives you everything you need, and it's all within your budget. So Wayfair's huge selection makes it easier to find the fit and style for your home. The best part, it's free. It's It's not free. The items are not free, but the delivery is free, and it's hassle-free, even more important. Even for larger items, Wayfair's site is easy to navigate. Even I can find things that I need in a short time. And shopping for home decor, to be honest, is not my area of expertise. Wayfair makes it easy to tackle, you're not tickling anything, to tackle your New Year's home goals with endless inspiration for every space. Give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style for every home.
All right, let's tickle the defensive line here as we run through the positions. Okay, now we're I'm just making fun of you for
That's fine. Yeah, no, I think that's great. I said tickle. Would you like me to talk about the defensive line? Why don't you introduce this topic?
Yeah, I certainly can. So Nebraska brought in a few defensive linemen for its 2025 class. Guys like Malcolm Simpson, Tyson Terry, Cade Peterzak. Is that how you say his name?
I do not think that's how you say his name. We need to get a clarification on the pronunciation. If anybody out there in the Dakotas, he's a North Dakota guy, isn't he? Wow. If anybody is listening and knows how to pronounce that, please let us know. But we'll figure it out, and that's our job, and get back to you on that. He's a big time prospect from up in the Great North.
Jeremiah Jones also on that defensive line for Nebraska. Now, remember, it was kind of torn down. They lost a lot to the transfer portal. Guys like James Williams and Jamari Butler and Princewell Uman-Mielen. It thought for a minute that it was going to lose Keona Davis, who ended up returning. It gets back Riley Van Poppel. It then gets it brings back Elijah Judy. It then gets Jalen George, Williams DeWannery, Gabe Moore on that defensive line. So it's a totally open new room. And I don't think from my perspective, looking at the names, there's any transfers that you just pencil in like they are going to play. Now, Nwaneri is the most talented out of the group. And we'll see if it clicks for him at Nebraska. If so, he's an obvious starter for Nebraska. Outside of that, it'll be really interesting to see how it shakes out.
Eventually for Nwaneri, absolutely. To start off the year in 2025 for him as a starter, I think that's probably shooting a little bit high. We'll see what the spring brings for him too. But this is a position that's really interesting because, again, like the wide receiver spot, there's just such a different look to go into 25 than what you came out of 24 with, and even what you expected to go into 2025 looking at. For Malcolm Simpson, Cade Peterzak, Tyson Terry, I don't know how much it has changed. Those are the three. Jeremiah Jones plays a lot of positions, but I don't think defensive line is one of the positions that he plays. Terry.
Why do I have him there on my scholarship distribution? My thing is a disaster right now.
He's either a receiver or a DB. I mean, I suppose he could muscle up to be in like a
lineman.
No, I think he could muscle up to be in like a Javen Wright kind of linebacker, but he would really have to transform
All right,
things.
We'll take him out of there. We'll put him somewhere else.
Tyson Terry is coming off of a knee injury, and he's wrestling at Omaha North this winter, trying to go for a fourth consecutive state championship, all undefeated, by the way. But he's not 100%, and that knee's probably going to need a little bit of attention when wrestling is over. So whether that involves surgery or doesn't involve surgery, I think you can expect Nebraska to move a little bit more slowly with Tyson Terry through 2025. He's not an early enrollee. And with Simpson's the highest rated of the guys, and I think Peterzak, you talked about Connor Booth being under the radar. Cade Peterzak absolutely is under the radar. Like, he's somebody, again, same thing I said with Booth. Like, he's going to make an impact in college football for certain. In my view of it, we'll see how that plays out. Is it going to be as a Nebraska defensive lineman in the short term? I don't know, but where they're at with defensive line as a result of the changes that were made to the roster over the past 2 months is, it's a wait and see approach. Like Riley Van Poppel and Elijah Judy, like you said, Connor, are the big names that Nebraska has to lean on. You look at Cam Lenhart, also as a guy who plays the edge position. They need him to be big in 2025. But the transfers factor into it, and a couple of those freshmen probably, if you can get something out of them, that's a bonus.
I think you probably like what you have, right? You're okay with the bodies in the room. Maybe you could add another with production attached to it, but if not, you can live. And with that, like there's not, I don't see the pecking order the same way at that position as I do as clearly as wide receiver or running back, right? Like if you're a freshman, you're probably saying, all right, these guys in front of me, who are older than me have to prove themselves. So let me throw my name in the hat too. Elsewhere, Mitch, before we get out of here, let's get a little update back to the transfer portal now, as the portal never quits turning, apparently. Shiyazh Pete, apparently down to 2. This is according to On3's Pete Nakos, who came through with a little bit of intel last night. Michigan and Nebraska, it appears.
They appear to be the leaders.
Okay.
So I did a little bit of research on this because this is a big deal. If Nebraska is able to get Shiyazh Pete, who's the former All-Conference USA offensive tackle out of New Mexico State, if you're able to get him, well, then you've solved your problem seemingly at offensive tackle, because you can plug in Pete and Elijah Pritchett, and there you go, starters day one. If you miss him and he goes to Michigan, not only are you still looking for something at offensive tackle, maybe it's Gunnar Gatula, but you need depth at that position. Not only that, and if you lose him to Michigan, then you got to contend with him in September next year, because Michigan is Nebraska's Big Ten opening game on September 20th at Memorial Stadium. So I did a little bit of research and checked out Michigan's situation. So Michigan lost 3 offensive tackles to the portal here in recent weeks, including Andrew Gentry, which is a name that Nebraska fans might remember as a top 100 recruit out of Littleton, Colorado a few years ago. He's going to BYU after getting some starting experience and dealing with an injury in the last most recent season at Michigan. The Wolverines have picked up a couple of interior offensive linemen, but not a tackle. So if you're Nebraska, that's a formidable opponent that you are contending with in the University of Michigan. Head coach Sharon Moore, of course, formerly coached the offensive line, so I imagine he's good at recruiting offensive linemen. Yeah, demand is very important these days. How much do you need a guy, or as we've in the past referred to it as desperation, right? If like it seems like both of these teams are looking for a starter on the offensive at a premier position, right? So this is going to be a battle, I think, for Nebraska all the way to the end. Whenever a battle that should end in the next week, we should know in the coming days where Shiyazh Pete is headed. Have to go to school at some point, right? Yes, in theory, that is what you have to do. Yeah. All right, so that's important. Any Coach Prime takes before we get out of here? Yeah, so he's talking with the Cowboys. I don't know, how do Colorado fans feel about this? If Deion Sanders leaves to reunite with Jerry Jones and direct the Dallas Cowboys operations, did Colorado fans get snowed in thinking that Deion was there for the long haul at CU, or are you just very happy that he brought you rocketing out of irrelevance and got you 9 wins and you got all kinds of attention and love and elevated the stature of your program over these last 2 seasons? I don't know. I don't know about the likelihood of this. And by the way, okay, Deion had a quote last night to Adam Schefter. To hear from Jerry Jones is truly delightful, and it's intriguing. I love Jerry, and I believe in Jerry. After you hang up and process it, I think about it. It's intriguing, but I love Boulder and everything there is about our team, the coaches, our student body, and the community. That's not no. No, it's not. I thought you were going to say that there's a declarative statement at the end of that, like I will be coaching the Colorado Buffaloes next year. There was not. Okay. All right. Well, so he's thinking about it. He's open to it. And like you said, he may not be the Cowboys' top choice, but the Cowboys' job coming open this week. Last week was Black Monday in the NFL, and then it didn't happen, and then it happened. So this is like throwing a wrench, I think, in the whole coaching domino situation that's going on. And these things, like a job like the Cowboys open, and we've done work at The Athletic. You know, Max Olson, of ESPN, formerly of The Athletic, has done work like when Nick Saban stepped down, and just like the dominoes of how many coaches at how many programs it impacts it's incredible, because it goes down to the high school level, and lots of colleges have collateral damage. Like the Cowboys' job is one that does that. So no matter who Jerry Jones decides to hire, this is not us obsessing over Deion Sanders, so don't send us the emails. No matter who Jerry Jones decides to hire in this situation to replace Mike McCarthy, like, it's going to have an impact at the college level, at the NFL level, all over football.
Also, there's 2 coaches that are coaching in the national championship game who are apparently pretty well looked upon by the NFL as well. So, like, I don't know, maybe there's a whole nother run here that we're still about to go through.
Yeah, Marcus Freeman. Like every football operation in America would love to have him as their head coach right now. And his career is going to be so interesting to watch, whether he feels like he is at the pinnacle as the head coach at Notre Dame, where you get $20 million all to yourself for, not him, but the football program does. He might get that too for getting to the national championship, or if he aspires to ascend to the NFL.
All right. That is it for us today. We'll be back with more tomorrow. Appreciate you making Locked On Nebraska your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On Big Ten podcast. Find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.